Good morning. No, it's a party. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out to join us both in person as well as those who are tuning into our live stream as we celebrate the launch of Skyline. Today is an exciting day for me, for all of our CPS teams who've worked incredibly hard to make Skyline possible, and to all of you, our schools, our families, and the city of Chicago, who will benefit greatly from this huge advancement in educational curriculum equity. We have an exciting event planned for you today. We're going to start by watching a video of Skyline. It'll introduce Skyline, show you how it works, and also show you how the changes that we'll be making to ensure that it's a success. Then we'll be followed by a panel of exemplary national experts in education who will talk about Skyline and how transformative it is at the national level. Finally, we'll round out the day with a panel of key stakeholders who will share their diverse perspectives of how Skyline will benefit teachers, school leaders, and most importantly, students. Now, let's get this show on the road. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the introduction to Skyline. For over 200 years, Chicago's neighborhoods have welcomed people from all walks of life, including numerous countries, cultures, and creeds, giving them a place to call their own, a place to celebrate their identities, put down roots, and raise their families. Today, people from across the country and around the world continue to find that one part of our city to make their home.
With so many people coming to Chicago from so many places around the world, our city is and continues to be a city of many neighborhoods, each often defined by unique and discrete identities and cultures. And while this adds to the broad culture and diversity of our city, it also creates boundaries and disparities that echo between our 77 community areas and into our schools. Oftentimes, these disparities are most evident in the varying resources available between our schools, including the quality and cultural relevance of their curriculum.
Chicago is justifiably proud to be home to some of the best public schools in the United States. But we are also home to schools that don't have the curricular resources necessary to maximize their potential. Right now, individual schools are responsible for purchasing or developing their own curriculum. High-quality curricular resources that guide instruction and facilitate learning are essential to the profession of teaching. But more often than not, the burden falls on individual teachers to identify and assemble their own resources. As you can imagine, when teachers are forced to find their own materials, often turning to the internet, the quality of those resources begin to vary widely.
I have witnessed firsthand the many inequities our students experience in accessing the high-quality curricular resources that are critically important to academic progress. As students transition from elementary to high school throughout the city, or even transfer schools within their own communities, these inequities became painfully clear to our families and to me. Students who experience low rigor learning environments and curricular resources that are not grade level appropriate are ill prepared for post-secondary opportunities and often experience a false sense of achievement. Yet, students who access rigorous standards-aligned content requiring high cognitive demand thrive throughout their elementary and secondary years and are positioned for success in college and beyond. This inequity should not exist, and students' educational experiences and access to high-quality educational resources should not be dependent on their zip code. Every child has a fundamental right to a high-quality education with access to curricular resources that set the bar appropriately high to prepare them for success, regardless of the classroom they sit in. 3 years ago, Chicago Public Schools sought to bring these resources to all of our students by developing Skyline. Skyline is the district's first ever digital pre-K through 12th grade standards-aligned and culturally responsive curriculum. And we are excited to announce that on July 31st, all district schools will have access to the Skyline curriculum and supporting learning materials in English language arts, mathematics, science, social science, and 2 world languages, which include Spanish and French, so that teachers can begin creating their lesson plans for the 2021-22 school year.
Skyline is a critical part of Chicago Public Schools' ambitious 5-year vision. Launched in 2019, our vision acknowledged the positive national attention our students were beginning to receive, as the academic growth of Chicago schools was outpacing their peers across the country. This growth validated our district's focus on intentionally using data to inform practice and investing in the development of our school leaders. Despite the attention, we knew that we couldn't rest on our laurels. And despite the progress, we knew that not every school had the resources they needed and deserved to continue this academic growth. Skyline was designed to provide these resources and put schools at the forefront of a 21st century education. And just as our city's world-famous Skyline serves as an inspiration and central connector to Chicago's neighborhoods, the Skyline curriculum was created to inspire and connect all of our schools with the high-quality, standards-aligned, and culturally inclusive curricular resources our students and educators need to succeed. The bulk of Skyline's activities are hands-on and peer-based, but as a digital curriculum, it also expands on students' learning well beyond the classroom and gives every teacher in the district access to all resources on internet-connected devices. This digital infrastructure will also allow CPS to revise, improve, and share new resources in real time to keep with and reflect the changing world our students live in. Whether it be contemporary poetry, scientific phenomena, works of art, or world events, Skyline will be able to more easily adapt and remain academically and culturally relevant in ways that traditional curriculum platforms cannot. Now, let's show you how Skyline works.
Skyline was built upon platforms and systems that provide teachers with the flexibility to make modifications and customizations to meet the needs of their students. Skyline curricular resources are all centrally located and easily accessible by content and grade level. Beginning at the course level, teachers can use the scopes and sequences, course overviews, and curriculum maps to begin to plan a learning journey for their students over the next school year. These resources provide key content standards, essential questions and enduring understandings, texts and learning resources, and assessment overviews. As a teacher explores an individual unit, they will have access to a brief overview of what the unit has to offer, as well as a comprehensive unit plan, which includes standards-aligned learning targets, English learner supports, multiple means of access through universal design of learning-based recommendations, and lesson descriptions. These comprehensive teacher-facing resources are kept in a Google Doc to allow the district to improve resources as needed in real time, and so all teachers can make a copy of guidance and add annotations that reflect the needs of their classroom community. As a teacher explores an individual lesson, the Teacher Facilitation Guide provides detailed guidance, supporting all learners' access to rigorous and engaging content. student-facing resources are organized into what are called Skyline playlists. Teachers can navigate the lesson playlist to implement instruction. Playlists allow us to create routines with slides that remind students where they are in a particular lesson, and they allow us to provide resources that students use on a recurring basis across a course or unit, like a journal or a social-emotional learning anchor chart, at the point of each use. Within playlists, classroom activities and routines are designed to foster student-to-student discourse in an environment where they do most of the thinking and problem-solving, both collaboratively and independently. Skyline curricula across all content areas include a full suite of assessments, including summative performance tasks and daily formative assessments like checks for understanding or exit tickets. And the assessments are designed to inform instructional decision-making by providing teachers with the information they need to leverage additional resources built into Skyline. These resources include mini lessons to support English learners or students who need more practice, as well as enrichment mini lessons for students who are ready for even more rigorous content.
The mere availability of digital Skyline resources is not enough. In order to ensure that our teachers and students can truly take advantage of the opportunities a digital curriculum affords, we have to make sure that all schools have high-speed internet. In 2019, Chicago Public Schools, in partnership with NetSync Fiber and multiple city agencies, began a project to construct 334 miles of new conduit for a high-speed, next-generation fiber network. Across the city today, fiber continues to be laid in order to connect all district schools to a source of reliable, high-speed internet. Beginning this fall and taking place over the next 3 years, this fiber will allow us to provide every single district school with a broadband connection of 20 gigabits, which is at least 20 times greater than the connections most schools have today. Still, while school-based internet is necessary, we must also ensure our students can access the curriculum when they are not in school. After-school access to high-quality curricular materials encourages students to continue their learning outside of the classroom, and they build upon the activities they began with their teachers. Through Chicago Connected, which launched last summer and is a first-of-its-kind program that provides no-cost, high-speed internet service to CPS students and their families, nearly 100,000 students will enjoy no-cost internet in their homes through the year 2024. Skyline can only reach its full potential after it is in the hands of our students and teachers. So our work over these past few years, and in the next 3 years to come, is designed to ensure everyone can reliably access Skyline anywhere they need it.
We can't wait to get Skyline into the hands of teachers in July. And it's very important to acknowledge that we couldn't have built the digital curriculum without significant teacher collaboration. Over the past few years, we've worked with more than 300 CPS teachers who have provided feedback on draft units to inform the revisions and improvements that were made. In English language arts, teachers identified new, culturally responsive works of fiction, memoirs, poems, and songs to build the courses around. In math, teachers compiled lists of Chicago traditions, events, organization, and community members to incorporate into units, tying mathematical concepts to real-world scenarios. And in social science, teachers identified opportunities to embed elements of criticality across the courses, starting in kindergarten, to encourage curiosity and invite students to question and shape the world around them. Now that the curriculum has been developed, building teachers' mastery of the content and comfort with the material is just as important as ensuring that their voices shape the original design. CPS is making significant investments in professional learning resources and supports to help teachers as they adopt Skyline this fall and over the next few years. all teachers will have access to curriculum-based professional learning designed to embed best practices, highlighted by national research, and give teachers the tools to not just use Skyline, but to make the resources their own. In addition to these supports, teachers will have the opportunity to participate in central professional learning communities, working with their peers across their networks and city to improve practice and celebrate success. And schools will have the opportunity to work with external organizations who develop distributed leadership structures and facilitate school-based professional learning with teachers for an extra hour each week, all designed to help schools successfully implement Skyline.
Just as we pay particular attention to the resources and supports that teachers will need as they adopt Skyline, we must also support our students. Skyline was designed with equity and student success in mind. First, Skyline puts standards-aligned, grade-level appropriate activities at the fingertips of every CPS student. No longer will a school's address determine a school's curricular resources. Second, Skyline was developed to support our English learners and diverse learners by providing language supports, differentiation built into the lessons, and accessibility features embedded in the platform. Third, social-emotional learning elements were incorporated across each course to support students' mental health and to create safe and supportive classroom communities. And lastly, the digital nature of the resources allow teachers to modify or customize a Skyline lesson to further meet the needs of an individual student or an individual classroom. By allowing teachers to make Skyline their own, every classroom will be even more equitable for our students.
A universally accessible curriculum exposes students to the vast network of world-class resources that make Chicago one of the best places to live. In partnership with Chicago-based cultural institutions, we can incorporate the digitized collections of world-class museums directly into our lessons and work with these same institutions to align their programming to what the majority of our students are learning at any given time of the year. In partnership with colleges and universities, we can grant access to our Skyline courses to further support our students' transition to higher education, while partnering on new courses that set our students up for even greater success. And as students show interest in particular elements of a Skyline course, we can highlight internship opportunities and citywide out-of-school time activities in partnership with businesses and community-based organizations.
We are on the verge of launching a significant opportunity for our entire city that will serve as a national model for school districts. This is only the beginning, and we are excited for you to join us as we introduce Skyline.
Wow. I hope that this video excited you as much as it excites me about the future of Chicago Public Schools. But we believe that Skyline is not only transformative for our school district, we believe that it has the possibility to transform public education across this country. This is why we've invited an esteemed guest panel of national experts to discuss this monumental step forward, especially as we rebound from the pandemic. But before we introduce you to our panel, please join me in welcoming our extraordinary CEO, Dr. Janice K. Jackson.
Good morning. Thank you, LaTanya. LaTanya, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your wedding today.
This is a great launch. First of all, thank you for being here today. Thank you for those of us that are joining us. And I want to thank everyone who's a part of our launch of Skyline today. I couldn't be more proud of an initiative that we have put together under my tenure. This project, I'm so inspired by this project, and I think that there are so many possibilities for us to achieve amazing things as a school system. But you've heard me talk about this, you've heard Chief McDade talk about this for a couple of years now, but I think if you really want to understand the transformational power of Skyline, we assembled an esteemed panel of experts today to really talk about that. This is a game changer and revolutionary, not just here in Chicago, but nationwide. And so please allow me to introduce our esteemed panel, and then we'll get this show underway. First, joining me on our Zoom panel is Dr. Elaine Allensworth, who is the Louis C. Breen Director at the University of Chicago Consortium on School Research. Dr. Allensworth has been conducting research on educational policy and practice here in Chicago for over 20 years. Her work spans from focusing on academic development to predicting student outcomes in college to identifying best instructional practices. It is informed by the fact that she was once herself a high school teacher. Welcome, Dr. Allensworth. Next, we have Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, the president of the National Academy of Education and professor emerita at University of Wisconsin-Madison. In her role as president, she works to improve educational policy and practice through high-quality research. As a professor, she focused on uncovering factors that lead to racial achievement gaps and outlining the benefits of culturally relevant instruction, especially for students of color, and someone who has personally inspired my career as an educator. We're so grateful to have you here today. We also have Dr. Timothy Knowles, the president of the Carnegie Foundation for Advancement of Teaching. Thank you for giving me a job. No, I'm just joking. The Carnegie Foundation focuses on addressing inequities in education through continuous improvement in professional learning. Prior to this role, he was the director and chairman of the Urban Education Institute at the University of Chicago, and also served as the deputy superintendent of Boston Public Schools. And finally, rounding out our panel is Dr. Scott Marion, the executive director of the Center for Assessment. The Center for Assessment works with state and district educational leaders to implement and evaluate best practices related to assessment and accountability policies and programs, all focused on the goal to ensure that our students have access to high-quality education. Dr. Marion was also himself a high school science teacher. Thank you all for being a part of this incredibly special day here in Chicago Public Schools. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. McDade to kick off our discussion. Thank you.
To echo Dr. Jackson, I want to just thank you again for being here with us today. I can't think of a better group to discuss the importance of curriculum in catalyzing improved student outcomes. Let's jump right in. As a district, we first announced our Curriculum Equity Initiative in 2019 because we saw the quality of instructional materials varying greatly from school to school in our city. We've been working very hard to bring Skyline to life over the past few years, and we're so excited at how far we've come. I'm curious to know, when you first heard about our goal in Chicago for a standards-aligned district curriculum that will be available district-wide, what was your initial reaction and why?
Turn it away. Okay. Yeah, well, honestly, my first reaction was, wait a minute, how is this going to be different than all the other curriculum initiatives, in Chicago and other places that didn't always turn out so well. There's a lot. I was really happy to hear that it was, very student-centered, really, encourages collaborative work among students, clearly aligned to standards, embedded assessments, all these things sound great, seen it before. What I think is really unique about this is that teachers were involved in the development, and it's really grounded in Chicago and supporting students and making those connections to Chicago. And it's not a one-size-fits-all curriculum, that teachers can figure out what works for them, what works for their students and customize it, work with other teachers, learn from each other, and keep making the curriculum better and better. And I think that gives it a great opportunity to be really successful.
I'd just like to say I had a past life as a curriculum writer and developer in the School District of Philadelphia. This is a monumental task that you've taken on. What I think is really attractive about it is that you didn't try to shoot for the mythical middle. That often what we do is say, well, we can't, we'll have an enrichment curriculum for the, quote, gifted kids. Then we'll have something over here for the kids who are a little slower. Or we'll do something over here for kids who languages other than English. I think what you tried to do, and of course the proof will be in the actual implementation, but I think what you've tried to do with this project is say, let's shoot for the stars on this. Let us have a kind of confidence in both students and teachers and community members that they can access the best that we have to offer. If they have to make adjustments, then they'll make adjustments, but it will not be because we've given them a second rate or lower quality program. We're going to give them the best quality we can give them. It actually reminds me of way back in the late 1970s when they talked about the Padilla proposal. It's like, if it's going to be cream, give everybody cream. Don't give somebody skim. Don't give somebody 2% and only give some kids cream. Give them all cream. Maybe you're just giving a cup of cream, but it's still cream. So I applaud you for a really ambitious undertaking.
Yeah, I'll echo that. As a close observer of Chicago's work and other places, I've often felt like I work mostly at the state level. States are too frightened to get involved in curriculum work, yet we know that access to high quality curriculum, or more likely the case in our country, the lack of access to high quality curriculum is really one of the great contributors to the inequalities that we see manifest throughout our systems. And so I applaud Chicago for, as Dr. Latson-Billings says, to really go for this. I was on a panel with another colleague yesterday, and she was citing James Baldwin's Go for Broke. You didn't go for bend, you went for broke. And this is going to be important vehicle for trying to equalize educational outcomes in Chicago. So I'm thrilled, and I hope, because if I could do it in Chicago, then there's very few school districts who could say, oh, we're too big for that. We can't do that. So I think this is going to be a real lighthouse.
I guess my quick reactions were, first and foremost, finally, thank you, Chicago. It's about time someone broke this ground. Curriculum used to be singular, unitary, as Gloria said. It used to be top-down, knowledge imposed, not teacher-built or co-constructed. Dewey taught us 100 plus years ago that in order for learning to be engaging, you needed co-construction, both from with children and with teachers. And you've built in a digital era an opportunity to do precisely that. I think the other quick thing I'll say is I love the fact that you're able to individualize. So if I'm a native Spanish speaker in 5th grade and I'm ready for 10th grade Spanish work in Spanish, I can have it. And that's an extraordinary breakthrough if Chicago leverages that to really individualize what is taught and learned based on where young people are. I think the acceleration opportunity here for Chicago young people and ultimately over time the nation is pretty extraordinary.
Thank you each for your insight. I want to touch briefly on comparing the present versus the past. How has the conversation about what matters within a curriculum evolved over the past 10 to 15 years?
I think Gloria should start with that one.
Thanks for volunteering me, Scott. I appreciate that. Let me just say that and I get pushback on this, but we are working with the brightest, most digitally involved, most globally interconnected generation we have ever seen. These are the smartest kids ever, okay, ever. And because of that, their involvement with the technologies means that they have access to knowledge and information that we could have never dreamed of. And they have it at the palm of their hands. I mean, they don't have to go to the Chicago Public Library to get information. So the fact that you are building a curriculum that is doing what I have been saying for the past 15 months to school districts, and that is moving the technology from the periphery. Most of our school districts, even our institutions of higher education, have the IT people over somewhere on the other side of campus on what you just call them when your email goes down, or you started a new platform. Oh, I hate this Office 365. Come fix this. That's not who they're going to be from now on if you're smart. They're going to be in the center of the teaching and learning enterprise. And for Chicago to step out and do that first is really, you are to be applauded for that. And I will certainly sing your praises as I talk to districts around the country that we really do have to move to a place where the curriculum is driving the teaching and learning. And no clap back at Scott, but it's not the assessment that should be driving, and he knows that.
That's right.
It ought to be the curriculum. It's exactly what I'm learning, not how I learned it. So.
On that, and I want to stop the
debate. Yeah, I'll just say, we actually had a nice little experiment in this country. I'm trying to think of when it was, whether it's the late 90s or the early 2000s. But the National Science Foundation funded really high quality curriculum in math and science. And they put out some really fine models. The thing about them, though, as my colleagues talked about, is they were written by experts, clearly had teacher involvement in the work, but then they were handed down. And the configurability of the Skyline curriculum and the involvement of teachers along the way, I think is going to give it a better chance of sticking, because teachers will come to own this and will continue to push them forward.
I was going to jump in where Scott and Gloria started. Can you guys hear me? It looks like I'm looking at the screen. Oh, I wanted to jump in on that conversation about curriculum driving assessment. And really, we have to acknowledge the fact that we are, at the tail end of really a life-changing and altering scenario for all of us, and our students have been educated during that time. What do you think the pandemic taught us about the role of curriculum in creating consistency for our students with regard to student engagement as well as academic growth? In particular, large urban school systems like Chicago Public Schools. What did we learn, and what should we carry forward in a post-pandemic environment?
I would argue that the pandemic taught us things that we really already knew, that student engagement is the key variable in curriculum and in teaching and learning more broadly, that young people need to solve real problems, not fake problems, and curriculum has basically been something that happens to students, like getting a haircut, not with them. And I think in that sense, we knew all that. And so where I think you've got promise in Skyline, I think there's a lot of promise. One thing, and this may be irreverent, but I think you are going to take a run at putting the big publishing companies, at least maybe not out of business, but at least creating an appropriate competitive threat. We no longer are going to need to make $5 million book purchases that are then out of date in 3 years, which you then have to replace. You've made a very smart move, I think, not only in terms of quality and differentiation of learning, but also in terms of efficiencies for the district, and actually being smart in terms of the resources you have available. So that's my quick response.
Go Good, Gloria.
No, I was just going to say that I know we talk about the pandemic, but I've been arguing over these past 15, 18 months that we've actually had 4 pandemics. COVID, of course, is the one that we all know of, and it's the reason that we're in this on this platform. But that's not separate from the fact that our students have witnessed a kind of racism up close and personal, and Chicago has not been, immune to it.
Exactly.
The fact that they have to worry about whether they can get home. They have to be afraid of the people who are supposed to protect them. So that's the second pandemic. And I say it's pandemic because it is around the world. I've talked to colleagues in the UK, in France, in Canada, in Australia, who all have stories to tell about anti-Black racism in particular. The third one is an economic collapse that we have to worry about. Now, I know the government has done a lot of things to help prop us up. But we still have people facing evictions. We still have people who are facing perhaps foreclosure. We have people who have not gone back to work. Something like 2.2 million women have left the workforce in the midst of COVID-19. And then that fourth one, and we don't like to talk about it, but it's not a hoax, it is the coming environmental catastrophe. My grandchildren live in California. Last year was horrible for them. They're all athletes. They can go outside. They can do it. And it's going to happen. And now these young people that we are serving are trying to process all of this stuff. So the beauty of what you're trying to do with this curriculum is to say there's a level of flexibility and malleability to what and how you are learning. Elaine hasn't said a lot, but I'm going to pick on her a little bit. I've been telling districts all across the country, if your children do not leave your school district bilingual, you have miseducated them. I'm not saying your Latinx kids. I'm saying all of your kids. How can you have a school district in Austin and think you've educated them when you keep people leaving monolingual? It's like you don't even believe your own data. So the world in which these youngsters are coming into and creating, incidentally, is going to need a lot of the kind of flexibility that I think that Skyline is offering.
Yes.
I'm going to jump in. I want to kind of piggyback on something that I believe Tim talked about when he kind of mentioned the publishing companies. We had a big decision to make with Skyline, and that decision was, finding a balance between purchasing curriculum directly off the shelf created by publishing companies, or just building from scratch, building your own from scratch. And building from scratch.
You lost your sound.
They can't hear you.
They can't hear.
Can you hear?
Can you hear us now?
I think we could predict the question. Could you guys hear us?
All right. Can you guys hear us now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, perfect. We had a big decision to make whether to purchase curriculum off the shelf or build from scratch, from the ground up. Purchasing off the shelf wouldn't give us the personalization that we needed, or the ability for it to be culturally relevant. And then building from the ground up just would take too long, and our students just don't have that kind of time. And so we landed in a hybrid. And I wanted to ask what you thought about districts and what they can learn from the hybrid approach that we took to create our library of curricular resources. Kind of taking what publishing companies had to offer and modifying the licensed content to be what we purchase, where it has that personalized, customized feel, but didn't take us 10, 15 years to build from scratch.
Yeah. Elaine, you look your way in. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think that made so much sense. And I think what's really exciting about the Skyline curriculum is that the idea is that this is a curriculum for Chicago, where you're taking advantage of all the resources in Chicago and also the Chicago context to make the curriculum as meaningful as possible, which you couldn't get from a curriculum company that's trying to produce a curriculum for districts across the country. And, one thing we've learned from research is that, learning, it's emotional, it's relational, relationships are key, emotion is key to learning. Students aren't machines, you can't just put things in. So you want to make sure the content is something that, students are excited about and interested in, and they see how it's relevant for their everyday lives. And so I think this approach, just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to build on that. I thought that was brilliant because I think if you would have gone with either end of the continuum, either purchased it outright or tried to do it all on your own, would have failed miserably. And so in this case, you're acting as the general contractor, if you will. They have to be responsible for you, but then all the subs, if you will, have to meet these deadlines. And if you lay this on the back of teachers and others who are already overworked, it just would have taken, as you said, a generation of kids to get it done, and probably not as coherent, nowhere near as coherent as you have it. So this strategy, and I hope that somebody writes about, really that inside baseball stuff of what you guys had to do, because I think that is the most viable model for large and even modest-sized districts going forward.
And I would just say bravo to you for taking back the concept of curriculum. Mm-hmm. Buying a textbook is not buying a curriculum, it's buying a textbook.
That's right.
Okay. Anybody who is taught at the college level knows that the textbook is not our curriculum. We build the syllabus, we build the curriculum, and we pull on resources. Yeah. Now, most teachers don't have that kind of time to do that. So you kind of stepped in the middle to allow them access to the resources while they can indeed put their own specific touches on it. But the curriculum, I moved my family from Philadelphia to California, and I asked questions of my kids' teachers about curriculum. They handed me textbooks. I said, this is not your curriculum.
Yeah.
This is your textbook.
Yeah. Right.
But that's really the way people have come to think of it. So I'm glad that we are breaking out of that notion and understanding that the curriculum involves an array of experiences that students have under the aegis of the school, whether it is, visiting the DuSable Museum, whether it's going to the Chicago Art Institute, whether it's reading a piece of literature by Gwendolyn Brooks. That's going to be different than just handing me a book, and they will be all the better for it.
Yeah, I would just add two things. One, I think the hybrid model is inherent to it is the opportunity to learn and improve it and constantly refine it. And if Chicago builds the systems in place for teachers and school leaders to do that, and for the system itself to do that, then it's gold. If you neglect that, then it could become static. But I think the opportunity there is for that learning and improvement in terms of curriculum design and execution and teaching to be instrumental to this moving forward. The second thing, I think, LaTanya, you said, what can another district learn from a hybrid approach? If I were another district, I would want this. I would want Skyline. I would not want to recreate it. So I think this is where you have become pathfinders, and I think Chicago needs to actually think seriously about how to help influence the nation with this, because it would be crazy for the whole country in thousands of districts to try to recreate something that you've put so much energy and thinking into. That is adaptable, so therefore is relevant to Baltimore and Winnetka. So I think there's going to be demand, but I think you should think hard about how you want to manage and manage the demand, but take the opportunity to share with the nation the tools that you've built.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so many nuggets, and I got to stay on track, but I want to pipe in on a lot of them. The one that I do want to lift up is this notion around curriculum. I think back to 22 years ago when I stepped in as a teacher. I was given the blue book, that's the attendance book here in Chicago, in the teacher's edition, and that was the curriculum. And I note that because Chicago Public Schools has come so far, and I'm incredibly excited about the future. And you're going to hear from the leaders who are going to be taking this to the future here in Chicago Public Schools in the second panel. Can you hear me? They can't hear us again. Let me know when we're back.
You are now.
Okay, we're back, great. And LaTanya lifted up this decision we made around the hybrid approach. And there were so many different decisions we had to make during this process. And I'm happy we're in a place where we can laugh about those now. Some of them were very tense. But this notion of continuous improvement was built into that. And the need for technology to be central was critical in that. And so thank you for lifting that up. Chicago has also been a leader in another way that we're incredibly proud of through our Chicago Connected program. As a result of the pandemic, we guaranteed free access to broadband internet connectivity for 100,000 students. And we did that not just during the pandemic, but guaranteed it to students and families for the next 4 years, hoping that that's a bridge and gives the government an opportunity to step up, because I think we'll all agree that we're past this debate about one-on-one. We're past this debate about the need for internet connectivity. That is a utility that every student should be afforded in order to have access to a high-quality education. I would want one or two of you to just weigh in on this question. What advantages do you think a digital curriculum affords teachers, students, and parents? And why should more districts invest in improving their systems so that kids have access to digital resources?
I'll start. I mean, to me, it's in wealthy districts, they might buy new textbooks every 7 years, right? And as Gloria says, a lot of people think, well, that's the curriculum, but that serves as the backbone. And in less wealthy districts, we know that timeline could stretch out to 20 years. So people are using outdated resources, and in this day and age, almost a year into using them. And so the advantage of the digital, besides the fact that the kids would look at you like you're Luddites if you were just using books all the time, is the fact that you could constantly update it and build in this first of all, the continuous improvement in what's working, but also to take in what we're learning about the world and ourselves and update it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It depends on how it's being used in schools, the implementation, but there also is potential to support equity in other ways. Under normal circumstances, even students can't always get to school, and there are disruptions, and it seems like this provides the opportunity for more involvement of parents and for flexibility for those days when students can't get to school, so that students aren't falling behind.
Yeah.
I
would just add that paper was invented in 793 AD in China, and digital is the new paper. It is, and so if we're serious about moving forward, it's not only more efficient, it is paper, and it has all kinds of affordances that if we stuck to paper, we would be crazy.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly quote John Dewey, since he was invoked earlier. And John Dewey said, if we teach today's children like we taught yesterday's, we will rob them of tomorrow.
Yep.
And we're still doing 19th century education in most of the places of in this country.
I want to turn to you, Dr. Ladson-Billings, and specifically because while there's a lot of benefits to housing Skyline within a centralized portal, we didn't want educators to feel like we were pushing something that was a one-size-fits-all. So we worked really hard to ensure that our language arts lessons were culturally relevant, rooted in culturally responsive text, that our math lessons connected to Chicago-based events, and that our science lessons were highly interactive and related to what students were actually interested in learning about. You've spent much of your career digging into the importance of culturally relevant instruction. What impacts do you anticipate from the strategic approach the district took to infuse Skyline with culturally relevant text and examples?
Well, I think that the obvious thing is that people no longer will have the excuse that they don't have access to certain materials. I think that takes that off the table. My own turn from curriculum to instruction came as a result of me seeing, as Tim mentioned, people with 7 and 8 year old textbooks and saying, what am I supposed to do? So I've always thought that no matter how good your curriculum is, the instruction is going to be crucial. People are going to have to be able to adapt and adjust. And one of the opportunities that I think that this curriculum affords Chicago is to engage parents in a new and exciting way. We haven't said very much about parents. They may be your skeptics, because we all want to learn the way we learned. I can remember sitting in algebra classes on back to school night and having a teacher say, how many of you are telling your kids that when they move the integer to the other side of the equation to change the sign from positive to negative? And we're all raising our hands, proud that we're helping our kids. And the teacher said, stop it. Don't do that. I'm trying to teach your kids why it changes, not that it changes. And so I think you're in this moment. Your parents are going to see some stuff that they haven't seen. And it won't just be your parents of some of your kids who are struggling to, say, read or access mathematics or access English. It'll be some of your high achievers, because everybody's used to read Kill a Mockingbird, read Scarlet Letter, do algebra trick. This is going to be new for everybody, but it's also a new opportunity for everybody. And I think that the ability to do it in a culturally relevant way is just exciting. You've built so much in there that I think they'd have to work hard not to do it in that way. So I'm excited that you pulled on the resources of what is a global city. Okay, it is a global city. Everybody knows Chicago everywhere, and you're going to take advantage of that. So I'm excited. Can't wait to drive down there and see what you guys actually do.
I want to bring Elaine back into the discussion. I know over a year ago, we were celebrating some of the data that this consortium released highlighting the gains that our English language learners have made in Chicago public schools. And we took incredible care in the creation of Skyline to make sure that we not only thought about the instructional needs of our English language learners, but we have many lessons and lesson level to support our students, both our EL students as well as our diverse learners. How do you see Skyline building upon that progress that we've made with our English language learners, and what advice do you have about how we can, take it to the next level?
Yeah, it's really exciting. English learners in CPS show really strong growth, and it's really important to have resources that make it easy for them to learn new concepts while they're still learning English. So having the materials, clearly aligned with the English proficiency standards, it's going to make it a lot easier for teachers to design lessons so they're challenging for students but not frustrating. We also know that learning new concepts in your own language that you feel comfortable in is going to be more effective for understanding. 90% of the English learners in TPS speak Spanish, and so having materials in Spanish is going to help students really be fully engaged in learning. And beyond that, it also supports bilingualism, which is a really important district goal in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that.
The only thing I'd add is I know more about the assessment design as part of Skyline, but what you did throughout the whole thing, as Gloria started, it's not like you have a special curriculum over here for EL kids and you have another curriculum over here. You really employed the principles of universal design for learning. And through that, by making, building in accessibility and opportunities right from the start for everybody, it will permeate down to the design of classroom activities for teachers and others. So I think you set yourself on the right footing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Simultaneously, can you hear us? Can you hear now?
Yes.
Now? Okay. Thank you so much for that insight. Simultaneously getting Skyline off the ground and finding these ways to support specific student groups that you've just discussed would have been 10 times as difficult if we did not conduct a robust educator engagement process over the past several years. In total, we had over 300 educators provide detailed feedback on our draft units, and they used evaluation rubrics that we developed in partnership with Ed Reports. Some of our panelists are former educators, so I want to ask a couple of you to just respond to this question. How do you think the district's unprecedented use of educator feedback to create Skyline will lead to improved student outcomes?
Well, I'll start because I'm going to come from an international perspective. Every year we look at these invidious comparisons between the U.S. and other nations. And one of the nations that, of course, we've all zeroed in on is Finland. What we know about Finland is that teachers have tremendous input on teaching and learning in their systems. They design assessments. They choose among the best and brightest to be teachers. And so the fact that we are finally getting back to a place where we're saying to teachers that we trust you, that we actually believe that you know what you're talking about, that you are, quote, the point of service people. I always make this kind of analogy between the difference between teaching and nursing. Nursing has risen in its prestige because, number one, we've improved the amount of professional development and training for nurses, and we've placed the nurses closer to the academy. With teachers, we've taken them in the opposite direction, say, oh, you don't need to go to school, you don't need to learn anything, just come and teach. And I think that this opportunity to be engaged in curriculum development is something that many people went into the field to do in the first place. In fact, I have a young student from Chicago who took a job in Houston, and she came back and she said, I just couldn't stand it. She said, because they don't want me to think. They just want me to do what they've told me to do. So the fact that you are respecting the fact that your teachers are thinking human beings, that they're not just literate adults, is just wonderful. And I think because the teachers are invested in the curriculum, they are invested in its success.
I would just want to double down on that. I think this issue of trust is at the heart of the matter. And what Chicago is doing is saying, we trust you as professionals. And that has not been the norm in this sector for a very long time. There's been a lot of effort to teacher-proof everything, quote unquote, whether it's assessment or whether it's curriculum or whether it's even instruction, what actually happens in the classroom minute to minute. And that is fundamentally toxic and corrosive and won't get us to where we want to go. I want to emphasize one other part of this. Not just in the building have you engaged educators at every step, but one of the things I love is that you're also rolling this out in the way you are. You're saying to the system, this is voluntary. We're not going to force this. If you have something that's working, you can use it. But this is, and I would bet that the volunteers are going to far outnumber the non-volunteers on this. And then you'll build more trust in that, because people will see what the assets bring, how to integrate, what works, what doesn't, and you'll build momentum. So I think that was also a very just sort of straight down this line of let's actually acknowledge that our teachers are the most important professionals in our city, in essence, in terms of building the foundation for the place. So just kudos to Chicago on both of those fronts.
Thank you so
much. And I'll just add.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Oh, I was just going to add, I think the trust goes both ways, as Tim was alluding to. It's trusting teachers as professionals, and it's teachers' trust of the curriculum, because there's always risk when you try something new, and you're going to make mistakes. It's not going to go perfectly. And so having this curriculum where teachers can learn from each other, figure out what works, build it and constantly evolve, seems like it gives a lot of potential for just continuous improvement.
Yeah. And one of the areas where educator feedback played a significant role was in our approach to assessment. When we surveyed educators prior to building the curriculum, over 85% of them said that it was very important that the district provide them with assessments along with the unit and lesson plans. And so as a district, we were very deliberate in the development of Skyline to align with best practices that connect our core values with our core values of equity. This question is for Dr. Marion. What best practices in terms of assessments do you see within the Skyline curriculum?
So thank you for that question. And I've been privileged to be involved with Peter Leonard, your assessment director, and his terrific staff in doing this work. And like Gloria said, even though I'm the director of a company called the Center for Assessment, curriculum has to lead. And that's the brilliance of what you did. You built a curriculum, you were clear about your learning goals and your how you wanted to engage students. And then you've done what a lot of people are talking about. You're creating a balanced system of assessments that starts from the classroom and works out, as opposed to starting from the State House and smothering downward. Right. And so by having these lesson level assessments, teachers will be able to get quick and useful feedback on like it says, on a daily basis. The unit-based assessments could be one of the most powerful vehicles you're going to have for being able to monitor student progress and be able to actually have conversations across teachers about what's working and what's not. And then the homegrown interim assessments will allow for these more distal checks that principals and others could have a sense of what's doing. But it's all rooted in the curriculum. And the huge advantage of that is it's one thing to get an assessment result. It's another thing to say, now what do I do? Mm-hmm. Well, when you have these, what we call drop from the sky assessments, you're guessing. But now the curriculum provides the interpretive framework for teachers to say, oh, Elaine didn't get this. So I actually know what the sequence of learning was in my class, and I could do something about it as opposed to just guessing. So this is, and I've been dragging Peter to national conferences to tout this balanced system of assessment in Chicago because it is the model for large districts and modest-sized districts nationally.
Yeah. Dr. Marion, thank you for lifting that up. I think all of us as educators that have been focused on this for years knows how difficult it is to incorporate assessment into that instructional core. And if we're being honest, oftentimes it's left as an aside, and we're just focused on the state test and the high stakes testing. But this, what happens in the classroom, when you mention unit tests, that's the key. That's when we can really assess learning and the impact that educators have had on students learning, on a particular unit. So thank you for lifting that up. We think Skyline is a game changer in a variety of ways, and one category is also with professional learning. As you probably would guess, we're rolling out a new program, so we're going to have expert sessions, trainings, all the things that you would naturally see. One of the things that I'm excited about is we were putting a big bet on technological training for our teachers, because we knew a lot of teachers would be afraid to engage. But I think one positive thing that came out of the pandemic is that many of our teachers were thrown into the deep, and so we can kind of accelerate that. But we're also going to still provide additional technical support for schools that have special needs. I want to turn to Tim and ask him to respond to this question. We know that implementing curriculum requires this scaffolded approach, and it has to be specific to the needs of the individual schools and teachers. Can you talk a little bit about how a centralized curriculum creates both efficiency and effectiveness in professional learning systems?
Yeah, Janice, thank you for that question. First, I was thinking this morning when I arrived in Chicago in 2003 that one of the things I discovered early was that there were 33 different math curricula in place in 9th grade for mathematics. So one thing we know is that an entirely decentralized curriculum is fundamentally inequitable. Right. If you have high mobility rates in a city and kids are bouncing from school to school and encountering a completely different curriculum wherever they go, that leads to trouble. Yep. in significant ways. So likewise, we also, as we've been talking about, we know that a fully centralized top-down command and control curriculum also doesn't work. There needs to be student, parent, and teacher agency and voice in the work every day. So I think that's where the promise of Skyline lives, is that you've created the right balance of coherent citywide and with allowances for voice and agency from students, from teachers, and from parents. The opportunities for learning there are significant. I hope over time you build in what Carnegie calls networked improvement communities, opportunities for teachers and school leaders to really dig in and learn and work together on what's working and what's not, to share practice and make practice public to each other as a way of deepening their work on the curricular front. We know nationally, and I believe this plays out in the data in Chicago as well. When you poll teachers and you survey teachers, that 50% of teachers, approximately 50% of teachers, say they're making up their curriculum. They're actually just figuring it out for themselves. They may be using a textbook, but basically they're just figuring it out for themselves. If that's true, or even if that's half true, that 25% of American teachers or Chicago teachers are actually making it up on their own, I think this could be the most significant reform in Chicago's history. Because what you're building is not only some coherence and the opportunity, the fact you've done this pre-K through 12, you're rolling it out with pre-K through 12 across disciplines is truly remarkable, and kudos to you for that. And if, as you're asking, Janice, you embed learning opportunities throughout, build both virtually through social learning platforms as well as in person, in schoolhouse, across schoolhouse learning opportunities, then I think you're sitting on gold.
I'd just like to also jump in on that. I think Tim's point about mobility is so important, because the kids that we tend to worry most about are among the most mobile. Yeah. That they have to move in the middle of the year. It's not their choice. They, the lease is up, or they get evicted or whatever. And so they're going often from school to school. But I think one of the advantages that this curriculum will give you that even supersedes mobility is the fact that you may have kids who come in who have missed whatever, but you have a way to go back and track and say, okay, I see you didn't end up having access to this. So you're not guessing at, well, what was third grade like for you? Right. I can actually go and take a look at what you should have been able to access in third grade. So I think that in and of itself is really powerful, because I think we put the onus on the kids for not having learned something, but maybe they actually didn't get taught that. And then the final thing I'd like to say is I love that in some ways you are beta testing this. The tendency of most school districts is to do everything by fiat. Next week, we're doing this. And that has its own built-in resistance. I have a very naive theory about school change. And I suggest that every school is made up of 3 kinds of folks. You've got puppy dogs. They are eager. Their tongues are hanging out. They can't wait. They don't care what you come up with. They're ready to try that because they are sick of what they've been doing. Those, you got them in the box, and they will be your early adapters. You got old dogs, and I'm not being pejorative because I'm old. But and there is some, the beauty of an old dog is they do have expertise. Mm-hmm. They do have experience. Problem is some things they just not going to do. They kind of just stuck in the mud and they not willing to change. But in the middle, you got a whole group of what I call my tennis spectators, and they are literally looking side to side. They're looking at the puppy dogs and the old dogs, trying to figure out who's going to win. So by allowing people to opt in, allowing people to adapt, you are almost guaranteeing success, and you're going to get those tennis spectators on board soon enough. The old dogs are either going to come along or they're going to quit. Either way, it works for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I'd add is, is you almost can't spend enough money and enough resources on professional learning for the success. And one of the things, and you guys are so smart about all this, I'm sure you've already thought this through, is to avoid these, I agree with what Tim said, is building these networked improvement communities will deepen expertise and build in this model of continuous improvement and evaluation, which is key. The other thing I would add is we've done this in many places, is you need to build true expertise. So not a trainer models, because they never work, but really build experts throughout the district. And you have a nice starting cadre already, the folks who were heavily involved in the development of the curriculum, and to continue to build that and deepen that bench of true experts. So if I'm in a school, I don't have to call the central office to ask a question about this. I could just go down the hall and talk to my local expert. And I think that'll have big payoff.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that there was a lot that was done right in the district around the rollout of Common Core math, and that, the district tried to have teams of teachers become experts, participating in workshops and professional learning communities so that they really understood, what the goals were, and then they could support each other and develop, a sense of collective efficacy in the school. Because when you just have one person that's their expert, a lot of times they're struggling themselves. And so to have people who have partners that are, figuring out how to use these new curricular resources, and then who can serve as examples to others in the school, could really help, the tennis watchers kind of come along.
Thank you. This has really been an incredible discussion. Learned so much listening to you. This is exciting for us, but we believe from this discussion, it's clear it establishes Skyline. You can't hear us? How about now? No? Okay, let us know with the thumbs up when you can hear.
We're not hearing you.
Well, I think we're at the last question.
Yeah.
And I can ask it.
Yeah.
I think I know what it is.
Oh, we hear you.
Okay.
Wait, we hear you again.
Can you hear now?
We can.
Okay, well, you know what, Tim, just take it over.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to problem solve.
Just go ahead, Tim. We are at the end, and this has been an incredible discussion, and you've kind of talked a little bit already about this, so if we could just kind of quickly, if you each can share with us, if every single school district in the U.S. implemented high-quality curriculum like Skyline, what do you think would be the long-term impact?
So I'll jump in. I think I just want to underscore something that Scott said, and that is, I think there is an opportunity here for Chicago and then therefore the nation to think about building up and back the teaching profession. I love the idea of there being an expert down the hall who's identified, whose work is public, who I can go to, whether I'm a tennis player or a old dog or a puppy or a watchdog, but I can go to. Secondly, and I say this, and I'm serious about this. I think that you're sitting on gold, and I think that you should think seriously about starting a company that would actually enable, which would actually distribute Skyline in a more systematic way than is typical, and then use the proceeds from that company to underwrite and undergird the ongoing R&D, the learning that needs to happen, and invest in teachers in Chicago. It would be a terrible shame if every district in the country had to build something like this for themselves. And I think they know that, and many of them don't have the resources to do it. So there seems like there's a really interesting opportunity here for Chicago to A, lead and the nation, and B, generate some revenue to support the ongoing work that you've already initiated.
Thank you. I saw the look on your face when Tim said that. It's like, all right, one more thing. But it doesn't have to be you guys. It could be partners. I think it's a really brilliant idea, Tim. Engage New York really served as a great model during the Common Core days, provided resources, but it was nowhere near as complete as this. So the only thing I'd add to this is go back to your question. We've been sort of dancing around unfortunately, the late Dick Elmore's instructional core, right, of meaningful content, instructional quality, and engaged students. And I would argue that the kind of curriculum that you built certainly captures the meaningful content part of that, but it's going to enable teachers to improve their craft, and it's going to help engage kids. So it's really moving in that way.
Yeah. And I would also, I want to echo what Tim has said about, trying to actually get some level of profit from having done this work. But I would say one of the niches that Chicago should be carving out for itself is the professional development niche. That's the thing you can do, whether it is summer institutes, whether it's online learning for teachers across the country. I think of something like the Bay Area Writing Project. I mean, trust me, it caught fire throughout California. And I saw teachers transform because of their engagement with that. Your question about what will this mean if every district adopted it, it would mean that just like when I'm in Sweden, and I go from Gothenburg to Umeå, which is south to north, I recognize what's going on in that classroom because that curriculum has been discussed and has been agreed upon and has been codified. Even though people might put their own spins on it because of their own instructional strengths, Swedish children are not disadvantaged by moving from Stockholm to Lund. They can go to other places in their country and know they're still Swedish. And Sweden has perhaps the most flexible immigration laws. So there are kids from all over the world sitting in their classrooms, from Somalia, from Iran, from Iraq, who are getting a Swedish education and a high quality one. So I think that it allows us to move out of these 51 fiefdoms, 50 states plus the District of Columbia, in which it's not clear. Actually, here in Madison, I can go to the 33 schools here, and I'm in 33 different districts.
Yep.
So the idea that there will be at least some unanimity is helpful for those of us in higher ed, because we can maintain the expectations we have to be able to get students who really have experienced a high quality education.
Yeah, I think now that you've done it, people will say, why aren't we all doing it? How do we all do it? And you think about, a common curriculum, in Chicago, well, I think people will be saying, why don't we have, we can all share these electronic resources. Why don't we do that so we can improve curriculum everywhere?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, this truly excites me. I think what you saw on my face when Tim was talking about the new company, I was thinking Janice is probably going to go and make a ton of money, build a new company on this. But I want to say that, you know, it's been certainly a privilege and an honor to be with you today and spend time. This is the end of our panel, but certainly not the end of our discussion. We will have our students, some students, teachers, and administrators that will come forward and continue this discussion on how the Skyline curriculum will impact and benefit Chicago. But I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to spend with us to have this critical conversation, because we know how important curriculum is, especially as we look at the work ahead coming out of the pandemic and the recovery that we will have to make for our students educationally. And we really believe that Skyline is that leap forward, and it really feels good to hear from each of you today. You are experts in the field nationally, and so it feels really good to know that this is supported both locally as well as on the national level.
It was an honor. You should be proud.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you guys heard that rousing round of applause here. We appreciate your expertise and appreciate you just sharing your nuggets. We're definitely going to be following up with you around creating NICs, and I also heard a pitch around researching what we're doing, which we think is critically important. So more to come. But thank you, and please tell all of your friends, tell everybody about Skyline. All right. All right. With that, we're going to transition. You know, there's so much to celebrate and talk about as we think about the launch of Skyline. At the end of the day, it's really going to be the educators in our schools who really make this come alive. And Dr. Lassen-Billings said just as much in her comments earlier today. Before we invite our expert panel of teachers and students and central office leaders who have helped to put this together, we want you to hear directly from them with this video that we're about to tee up. I also want to note that we will transition into a short 5-minute break after the video to give us time to make that transition, and then we welcome you all back to hear from our expert panel of district leaders and educators. So thank you for being here today. All right.
Our teachers are currently starting with the standards and then spending hours kind of searching the internet. They start with the standard, they go to any published curriculum that we've adopted, and then the magic starts from there. They start to infuse some innovation and some creativity.
So I always start with meeting with my content area team. We discuss all of the standards that need to be addressed over a period of time. From there, we take those standards, we break them down into skills. From those skills, we then develop our objectives, and then we teach them as such.
Currently, I develop lessons and unit plans by spending a lot of time doing research. Usually, I'm searching the internet.
One of the things that teachers do is that they get to know their students right away. They get to know who they are, they make connections, they find out about their lives, and then they go from there. So I'm creating these units, and I haven't really made connections yet. One of the great things about the Skyline curriculum is that a lot of that's been done.
The current approach is a little bit more difficult considering the time that is needed to properly plan for all of the students that are in front of you.
The current approach is difficult because it really relies on the expertise of the teacher.
Skyline will make lesson plan development so much easier for us in a lot of ways. First of all, we're really excited about having a professional learning community, not only with supports from CPS and central office departments, but with other schools who are working on Skyline as well.
I think Skyline will make lesson plan development easier because the material's been vetted. Having used it, I have a wealth of information at my fingertips, a wealth of lesson plans, activities, text recommendations, summative assessments, all that have been vetted, built with the kids' grade level and skill level in mind.
I'm excited to have a curriculum and be a teacher again and spend my time focusing on the students and how I'm going to deliver the material instead of creating the material. And I know that Skyline's done a great job of really providing us with a robust curriculum.
Skyline has the potential to make things easier because there are so many resources right there.
I felt like Skyline really made my instruction student-driven rather than trying to plan. And then it was really the students were the focus because all the resources were there for me to have the students really in the front of my mind rather than how am I going to teach them these standards.
I just think less time will be invested in looking for resources. Overall, that's what teachers spend a lot of time on, like pulling resources from different areas.
So my focus, instead of developing these units, is on the student and on the student growth. That's where it should be.
I started using it at the beginning of the year and love the way that it's based on standards. I love that everything is right there for you at the click of a button.
I'm excited about Skyline because I really believe it will make my lesson planning a lot easier.
Skyline has a lot of material, and at first, when you approach it, it might seem daunting. But take the time and go through it. You'll see that you have a great deal of autonomy. This material exists, and there's a lot of it. Mini lessons, entire units. You can use what you need to use in the classroom.
I think Skyline is going to really impact the quality of my instruction personally because I finally get to just be with the students and really interact and engage with the curriculum instead of creating it and spending a lot of my time and energy focused on the creation of it.
There will be a direct correlation between the implementation of Skyline and the quality of instruction for all students. The playing field will be level. All teachers will have access to a high quality curriculum resource that they don't have to make from scratch. It will save time and also give them an opportunity to infuse their personality into their practice. Teaching is very much a science as well as an art, and Skyline really enables teachers to tap into that.
he said it, I said they must have sent y'all all.
Janice.
Gonna start laughing. So some yeah. He keep asking. He was like.
Okay, so now you know we're not experts at this. All right. Listen.
He was like, because, you know, the talk.
Somebody go get the boss.
2020.
All right, let's wait. All right. We're so excited about the panel. That was an amazing discussion.
Oh, what I sent you, yeah. But you see, you got to, it's basically like your thing. Like you got to.
She's the boss, so I'm just going to wait. I'm not going to start yet.
Is she not there?
So be patient. Okay. You know, it was so affirming to listen to national experts really lift up this work. And everything that they talked about were things that we've been grappling with throughout this time in building the curriculum and getting to this point. And so it just felt so good. When I think about the impetus for this, when we started just started the seed, to plant the seed about the need for curriculum, and we started with the idea of stabilizing the educational experience for every single child in this district. And we heard that reverberated in every response throughout the panel. So we're really excited, not just that we're here at the launch and that our teachers, our school leaders, and our students will be able to benefit from this curriculum, but it feels so incredibly good to know and hear and have affirmation that this is right, not just for Chicago, but right nationally for kids across this country. And while it was amazing to hear from our national experts, it's critically important that we hear from our key stakeholders right here, the people who will be using this curriculum, benefiting from this curriculum, our educators, our leaders, and most importantly, our students. So to facilitate this next panel of key stakeholders within the district that will be the direct end users of this incredible resource, I want to welcome to the stage now our Chief Equity Officer, soon to be Chief Education Officer, Dr. Maurice Sweeney. And I'd also like to bring to the stage someone who will be really the face of championing this work. And I keep telling her, she's probably, you know, enough pressure already, but I keep telling her this is a legacy for the district, a legacy for me and Janice, and she will be carrying the torch along with Maurice. And so please welcome none other than our Chief Officer of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Shirley Chavarria.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. Hello, everyone. Thank you for continuing to share this moment with us as we launch Skyline. I'm thrilled to welcome a new group to the screen. Each of these individuals is a part of our CPS community, and they represent schools and neighborhoods across the city of Chicago. We have Shanita Parks, the Chief of Schools for Network 12. She oversees about 30 elementary schools on Chicago's South Side. 2 dynamic principals, Patricia Davlantes, the principal of Hawthorne Scholastic Academy, and Dawn Ramos, the principal of Tilden High School, my former AP. Shout out to her. 3 amazing educators, Mildred Rodriguez, a teacher at Kennedy High School, Kanika Treywick Glover, a teacher at Metcalf Community Academy, and both of them were a part of the curriculum collaborative of CPS educators who helped to develop the curriculum, with Ms. Rodriguez supporting our Spanish world language lessons and Ms. Treywick Glover supporting our math lessons. And we also have Juanita Martin, a teacher at New Sullivan Elementary School, who incorporated a draft of the Skyline resources in her classroom this year, and all of them working to support our diverse learners across the district. And finally, 3 rockstar students, Luz Mayancella, a senior at Westinghouse College Prep, Lion Nazar, a junior at Taft High School, and Cassius Palacio, a student at Brooks College Prep. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. As the Chief of Teaching and Learning, I am so excited to moderate this panel with Chicago educators. Before we get started, I do want to give a very special shout out to the 2 seniors who are participating today. It's June, it's graduation season. Congratulations to you both on everything you've accomplished. We wish you the best of luck in your future plans. So we just wrapped up, I think, a very exciting discussion about what Skyline means for the nation. And now I want to bring us back to what Skyline means for Chicago by grounding us in our core values. And specifically, as you heard Dr. Jackson and Chief Sweeney say, our commitment to equity and our commitment to being a student-centered district. So my first question to the panel is, what does an equitable and student-centered curriculum look like and mean to you? Anyone can jump in.
I'll start. Good morning, everyone. So when you think about equity and student-centered curriculum, it definitely just sends a true message of where we want our students to be able to connect with the literature, connect with the curriculum itself, so that most importantly, that they can really see themselves, share their stories, and also just have an opportunity to understand that their background, their history, and their culture is just vitally important. And so I also want to make sure that I engage the fact that when you think about equity in our curriculum, we want to ensure that there's a diverse literature and text so that they also are, again, just making those connections so that we so far often have never seen ourselves in any book, in chapter books, picture books. And so I think this is so really critically important for us right now to how the Skyline curriculum is being able to just really re-engage the resources that we have in Chicago and being able to incorporate that into our schools and our curriculum. So really excited about that.
I'd also like to add access and opportunity to high quality resources, curriculum, and instruction, regardless of school size, school location, or school demographics, is what the sense of equity really means to me, especially leading a small school.
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn to our students. All 3 of you participating are either juniors or seniors in high school. So I know you must have some memories of the curriculum you've encountered through your career. I'm sure that some of it was really helpful, some of it was probably less helpful. I'm sure you engaged in activities and projects that were exciting, and possibly some were boring. So as you reflect on your educational experience in Chicago Public Schools, what assignments or projects or other learning experiences are you going to remember positively, and why?
I can jump in first.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh. Thank you, Leanne. So I believe I was taking dual credit Spanish this year, and Black History Month was coming up, and I realized, like, what is she gonna do, because it's a huge month and it's only like so short, so we have to make the most of it. And we were learning about Afro-Latinos in the unit, and this also correlated with the Spanish National Honor Society. And I was so excited to learn about it because I'm myself an Afro-Latino. So I was really happy to see myself within the classroom and, have my culture being learned and whatnot. So it was the first year I remember they added that intersectionality, and they were adding other countries that consisted of Afro-Latinos instead of just Latinos like Haiti and Belize.
Thank you.
For me, good morning, sorry. I think some of the most beneficial lessons in school were ones that included me in it and students who look like me. So I do IB, and in my IB English class, we read The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, who is a Brown author. And just seeing those issues that are reflected within my own community being talked about in the classroom was really important to me. And then not only that, but talking about different solutions and different ways that we can go about these issues and why these issues exist started a really important conversation within the classroom, because as someone who lives in the North Side, I never had that. It was always like the Middle East is very unprogressive. It's very this and that. But it never talked about why. It was never talked about the colonization and just the American imperialism and how that hurt the Middle East in general. And I got to do that this year. And it really meant a lot to me as a student, because it wasn't just me picking up the pieces and trying to explain to everyone why it was happening, but it was also the teacher. And it wasn't, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I can step back and actually see the lesson unfold rather than get defensive and have to explain the full thing.
Nice, thank you. Thank you both. I certainly appreciate both of you sharing your experiences. Now that we've heard from our students, I have a question for our teachers who have both been a part of the Curriculum Collaborative and helping design the lessons that make up Skyline. Walk me through how you were thinking about what will be most beneficial toward student attainment and growth, because we know at the end of the day, we want our kids to be successful in their learning experiences that really create the great outcomes that we want. How did students' cultural backgrounds and lived experiences inform your work?
Good morning. So I'll jump in. So for me, the students needed a curriculum that, one, it engaged them. It helped them to develop their identities. They needed something so that they could make connections through their interests, foster their talents, and be culturally relevant. I teach on the far south side of Chicago, and all too often we have materials, but the students aren't able to make connections with them because they don't see themselves in their materials. So for me, students needed to be able to see themselves and their cultures in the curriculum. They also needed to be able to have access to the curriculum that would take their learning beyond the classroom but remain relevant to their communities throughout Chicago.
Good morning. And also for me, as a foreign language teacher, well, culture is an important part of the curriculum, right? Especially when learning a second language. And so obviously, as a proud Latina, it's important to me as well. And to represent all of the students that I've encountered, to be represented in the curriculum. And one thing that I did appreciate that as a reviewer of the curriculum, we were able to provide suggestions and they listened to us, and that is represented in the curriculum. So the students will be able to make those connections with themselves and see their backgrounds represented in the content.
Thank you. Now, I want to turn to Ms. Martin. To support educators through the remote learning, we released some draft Skyline resources a year early. And you were one of the teachers who incorporated them into your instruction. What was your experience using the draft Skyline resources in the classroom this year?
Okay, thank you. I want to first of all say that I applaud the name Skyline Foundational Skills, because we kind of strayed away from that in my last few years as an educator. I see that we've gotten away from building that foundation. And if we don't start with that foundation and help those children to have something solid to build and grow on, then we're fighting a losing battle for the most part. But with the draft of the curriculum, I focused mostly on those phonics skills, the word study portion of that curriculum. And I found that many of the children, you kind of assume that they're coming into a third grade setting already knowing letters, sounds, vowels, blends, and how those work together. Not always so. And so looking and working with this curriculum in its draft format, it has shown me that our children are very much capable. If we give them the tools to work with, they are ready and willing to absorb it. And I agree with some of the other panelists. Seeing themselves in the curriculum has also been a positive note for the children. I also want to state that children, when they are engaged in what it is that they're supposed to be learning, they value that and they go in hands down. I applaud and appreciate having the games, activities, having the slides already prepared. So it wasn't that I had to go and search for something in order to implement it. It was right there. I appreciate CPS also for preparing us by having those professional developments where they listen to our voice, they kind of tweak things along the way as we were working with it. And so I see this as a tool that is going to be successful for the remaining of the duration of this program, because you are only addressing, during this pandemic, we had the remote and the hybrid sessions, which it lent itself to both of those because you had the children who were able to manipulate the materials online, as well as children who were in person. You could print out the documents so that they would be able to access and utilize them. And so I just found that this was a phenomenal curriculum. And I'm looking forward to seeing the growth of all of the children across the city of Chicago, and hopefully in the near future, maybe worldwide, they will buy into a curriculum that is similar to this, because our children need a solid foundation in order to build upon, not only in literacy, across the board. We need to make sure that that foundation with the math is also on point, with the writing also on point, reading. And being the ELA literacy teacher at New Sullivan, I found that this has met many of the needs and desires that I know as a teacher. It met it to the fullest criteria. And so I'm looking forward to the growth that the children are going to make with the consistency of implementing this program.
Thank you. Thank you for uplifting so many things that were intentional in the design of Skyline. So now let's turn to our school leaders. Your question is really informed by some of the data that we learned as we launched the Curriculum Equity Initiative and designed Skyline. And it was also uplifted in the panel that preceded you. In Chicago Public Schools, we learned that up to 50% of teachers report spending 5 hours a week preparing curricular resources, and may spend up to, and if not more, than $250 of their own resources to acquire the supports they need. As you think about Skyline, how do you think Skyline will save time, money, and resources for you and your educators? And Chief Parks, for your network, how do you plan to use this time that might be saved to better support students and families?
So a Skyline actually, when I think about the time saving, it was also mentioned on the previous panel and just a little bit earlier from the panelists here, the hours that teachers spend, just countless hours, just researching the internet. And one of the key things about the Skyline is that now we know that it's vetted, and that those resources, when we talked about high quality, their resources are available for our teachers. And so that now, outside of utilizing that time scrolling the internet, now they can take that opportunity to really take the resources and the activities that are available to plan intentional lessons. You know, we do have to address, when we think about just the learning loss, and, you know, in not all cases, was during this pandemic, so some of our students who have actually thrived in this online, you know, hybrid model. We have to now plan for each of our students to be more intentional, so that we are addressing the learning loss and the gaps, as well as, you know, through interventions, as well as providing some acceleration with the resources that are available to ensure that our children, we're meeting the needs of our students as moving forward. In addition, from the network perspective, we also want to make sure that our structures, how we are supporting the schools and the teachers, because it's really helpful that now we have alignment and just continuity throughout. So that is one of our focus as we're going through for the upcoming year, to really implement and utilize Skyline, and to help our administrators so that they're not spending excessive dollars on a lot of supplemental materials or platforms that were used to support the curriculum. So now that we can again engage them all in a very similar conversations to ensure that our students, as many of them transition from school to school, that they know that they have a solid curriculum going from one school to the next, and that we will be engaging and supporting them with those resources.
And our principals?
Sure, I'll jump in. So as has been stated, curriculum adoption is a labor-intensive process. So, it can be a multi-year process, right? Looking at the needs, selecting materials, tracking outcomes, piloting. This can take a very long time, and not also with the pieces that teachers are writing themselves. So even if we're sourcing materials elsewhere, it can be very labor intensive. So we're very excited to have materials that are vetted, frameworks that are vetted. We can still make decisions, obviously, that are in the best interest of the students who are in front of us. We want to know our students and teach them what they're ready to learn. But we're excited to have materials and frameworks that we can work with and make them our own. The other piece that's really important for us is the professional learning communities. Often we are traveling all over the city and all over to suburban schools. We've been to Wisconsin looking for other schools who are doing similar things that we are. And now we're looking forward to having common pieces that more schools are doing with us. And so we can now keep those conversations within our district, and that will certainly save us a lot of time as well. So we're very much looking forward to that. The other piece I should talk about a little bit in terms of time is the assessments. The common assessments, it just can't be overstated how important they are and how much time that saves to have vetted common assessments that we can rely on with our teachers and in our school, because that alone, not only the curriculum overall piece, but the assessment piece can be a multi-year process. So we're very much looking forward to those things. And just as on a personal level, the buckets of work that we have as school leaders, instruction, school operations, and then of course the climate piece, which includes outreach to stakeholders. Every time one of those pieces goes down, we can spend more time on the other pieces. So I make myself available to my stakeholders all the time, but I'm looking forward to having more streamlined instructional process to do that even more often and with more intentionality than I already do.
I'll add, I echo what was just said. I'll also add, we have an opportunity now to really focus on the social dimension of building relationships and strengthening partnerships in our classrooms and across our school communities. Removing the barrier of having to fund curriculum, of having to develop and think about all the time that it takes really gives us an opportunity to focus on the emphasis of the SEL work that we're doing and the social dimension, as I also said. And in terms of budget, a lot of us in small schools will find ourselves, or even in larger schools, in a this or that situation, right? So I see an opportunity for some value add, because the this of curriculum, high quality curriculum is being provided to us from the district. So we can think about what's the add, what's the value that we can also bring to our communities to supplement what we're doing in the classroom, because we're not having to expend the dollars on curriculum that we previously had to expend. So I'm looking forward to the value add that this is going to bring to all of us in the school district.
Thank you. The next question is really for everyone. Obviously, a big part of Skyline is that it's digital, so we really appreciate that. I think the conversation around digital resources and technology in the classroom has transformed since the pandemic. How have your perceptions about teaching and learning changed?
I want to start because before I used to think of myself that I wasn't really computer or technology literate, and talk about timing, right? So this pandemic has really made me grow as a teacher, and especially when it comes to technology, I feel so much comfortable now. And then being part of this process really prepared me for, what's to come and implementing all of this. So to me, I think it was more of a growth than anything.
I'll jump in. So before the pandemic, it was like technology, we use more paper-based. And I kept telling my colleagues and my peers, like, we really need to make sure we get these kids on Google Classroom. But since the pandemic, it's like, okay, all hands on deck now, everybody's in. So the urgency behind it has definitely grown. And I've seen the growth, not only in my colleagues, but in the students as well.
I would like to piggyback off of that. So it's so crazy how dependent we are on technology, like crazy dependent, like internet is a utility now. And so I truly think we could benefit from education online if it is only equitable. So my perceptions of learning using technology pre-pandemic has been great. I was able to do my assignments online. I didn't have to use a single sheet of paper because I hate writing. And I didn't have to use a planner because majority of my work was like in a schedule. But now there's so much energy that goes into an online learning environment. I've seen students share their experiences online where they're exhausted. And I'm pretty sure teachers and admin feel the same way too, where you have to log in every day and you have to use your resources consistently in order to keep the class engaged. I remember one time, I was just like, I don't want to go to class today. And I just didn't log in. I was able to get my assignments done, but it makes a difference, because attendance isn't as important when you're able to just log in. And so with that being said, like, you have to actually be there to absorb the content. And sometimes I remember when students were giving presentation, they had to do it from their phone because their Chromebook wasn't a sufficient device for them to do their presentation on. And most likely, if they couldn't understand the content in the classroom, in the virtual classroom, they would have to outsource additional third-party educational content like Khan Academy or YouTube. So my perceptions of learning with technology are very vague because I feel like we could do so much more, which is why I'm so thankful for the Skyline curriculum to be coming into place. And we're moving towards greater expectations with CPS and other educational districts. But if we aren't moving fast enough with the world, we're going to be left behind. And a lot of CPS students, staff, admin are going to be at a huge disadvantage.
Thank you. Thank you. So our time is almost up. So I want to move on to our final question, which is about where we currently are as a district. We are finishing up a challenging school year, and we're looking forward to a full return to in-person instruction for most students. Thinking about the next 2, 5, or even 10 years, what do you think is the biggest opportunity for Skyline to grow and become an even more important part of the city of Chicago? And maybe we can start with our students.
I think the Skyline new curriculum can really expand not only in the classrooms, but it can expand in workplaces, all around the city and all around the country and all around the world. There's a need for diversity. There's a need for a more inclusive environment, and that includes like workplaces. So I think that whenever we think about like a student-centered curriculum or just a culturally inclusive pedagogy, we have to also think about how this innovates and how this reflects the society here in Chicago.
Yeah, and for me personally, I think that there's an opportunity to increase social and emotional learning, and also to increase a student-centered curriculum, which is really important. Like a lot of people mentioned here, a lot of the time classrooms, you have material and then the students aren't able to connect with the material. And then it becomes this thing where it's like, I just don't like school, or school is not helpful. And the school system, they end up going through it, but it fails them and it doesn't prepare them. And they get out of the school system like senior year, where it's like, what did I do that for? And I think it's really important to center student experiences so that doesn't happen, so they can be a little more self-reflective. Try not to just do the schoolwork, but let the schoolwork also contribute to how what their place is in society. And and their purpose in the world.
Oh, I thought someone else was trying to go. Sorry. I think the biggest opportunity for Skyline is definitely becoming an example for other school districts. I've seen a lot of examples where Chicago was the main leader of how to, do the educational district right, and especially I've seen us when working with the Student Code of Conduct, revising it and making sure that those edits do not have implicit biases. So I definitely seen the Skyline curriculum as an opportunity to inspire other educational districts to, kind of have it in their own way and align with their educational district.
Thank you. Thank you to our students for leaving us with that vision of what's possible. We want to thank each of our panelists for sharing your important perspective on how Skyline will impact students and school communities.
Thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So if you've ever seen a relay race, you know that at some point the person who is running with the baton is running full speed ahead, and the person who is about to take the next loop around is running as well. We're very excited to increase the speed of the work around curriculum in Chicago Public Schools. And we want to thank Dr. LaTanya McDade and Dr. Janice Jackson for all of the hard work and dedication for our Skyline curriculum. Let's welcome them back to the stage.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our event, and before we close, there are some critically important people that I want to thank. Like anything, this was a massive undertaking, and it was not Janice and I in a back corner trying to build this all out. It took it was a heavy lift and an incredible number of people to bring this to fruition. And so I would be remiss if I do not acknowledge some key people today. I want to first thank Courtney Hill, Helena Swanson Nystrom, if they're here, if they could please stand up. And Courtney's waving from the background. He's been beating us over the head all morning. For just putting this incredible event together. We wanted it to be something special, and I truly believe we hit the mark. And then a giant thank you to our Department of Curriculum Instruction and Digital Learning, if any of the members of the team is here. This has been a monumental effort on behalf of the team, and they've worked tirelessly for the last 3 years, and it's not over. So I really wanted to extend a thank you to them. But we've also had some critical partners to support us in this work. Some of them I see here today. One that stands out, I have to acknowledge by name, and he's laughing. First of all, he was a pain to me over the last 3 years, but a good pain. This man, Tim Beekman from Safari Montage, he was one of the first people that I spoke to when we embarked upon this journey. And I pitched it to him, and he said 3 things. He said, 1, you're crazy. And then 2, he said, you have to do it. And 3, I'll be with you the whole way through. And here he is today. And so I really want to thank Safari Montage as a critical vendor and partner. I also want to thank some of our other partners, Ed Reports, who's been supportive of us, Amplify Science, Public Consulting Group, IMS Global. If you're here, please stand up. I'll say again, Amplify if you're here, PCG if you're here, IMS Global, McGraw-Hill. They're being shy. I see them, okay? I can see you. McGraw-Hill Education, Vista Higher Learning, and Illuminate Education. Thank you so much. It has truly been a journey. We couldn't have gotten here without you. Still a lot of work ahead, but I wanted to just extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for going through this experience with us. Thank you. Shirley, take us away.
Maurice, who's closing?
Oh, no.
This is rehearsal.
Yeah, just thank you all for joining us. Support us, continue to get the message out. This is important for Black and brown children across the city. And we know if we really want them to have the academic progress that we've been having over the last 10 years and beyond, it is the now time to really push deep, high-quality learning. Thank you to Dr. Chevarria for all of the work that you've been doing, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.